My name is Eric Shabazz, and you're listening to the Invisible Hand Podcast. The world's ran by human nature, self-interest, and power. Let's get into it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? And back with another one. So today we're going to be talking about a very interesting video. It's called the 10K Summer TikTok Challenge. And this Asian girl, this woke Asian girl, wanted to challenge white people to take a break for the summer and do not post on TikTok at all in a woke attempt to basically virtual signal. And basically she said that people of color, including blacks and others, and she included Asians, so I guess now Asians are people of color, to white people to not to post anything on social media for the entire summer. I guess it's her woke attempt to make up for basically the wealth inequality in America. It's real interesting, and I'm going to break down in this video on a high level a couple things. First of all, I want to discuss Asians are not considered people of color, and I'll explain why. Secondly, competition produces the best result, and I'll explain why. And also, based on what she did, masculine men do not want handouts. And lastly, this whole ideal that the competition should like take a break for other people to get ahead. This is feminine ideology, right? This is not something a man would come up with. Lastly, I want to talk about how historically Asians in America have aligned with white people. And I want to talk about the Asian and black animosity that has existed in America and why her calling herself a person of color doesn't really make sense. So let's just get into it real quick.
If you're a white liberal leftist or consider yourself to be a white ally, I have a challenge for you. Don't create any more content on TikTok until September 22nd. And honestly, you deserve a break because every day is a white person day and y'all must be exhausted. So while you sit back, listen, learn, and truly decenter yourself, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, we got it from here. Please, though, continue to like, comment, and share our content because y'all are always talking about how you want to support us and create equity. But the truth that so many of y'all are unwilling to accept is that you do not want Black, Indigenous, and other people of color to lead and pave the way because what would we do without your perspective, your voice, your commentary, your education? We would thrive.
All right. So first of all, you saw how she said black and indigenous and other and used the word we, meaning that she included herself. Well, first of all, people of color don't normally consider Asians people of color, specifically if they're from China. Now, I'm not sure where she's from, but if she's from China, historically, they're not considered. Now, before I, rip her to pieces, I do want to say I commend her for even speaking like this, even though I don't agree with her woke ideology, because a lot of Asians are very, very biased in America, specifically ones from China. They won't speak against white people at all. They actually play an isolationist strategy where they don't get involved in any other people's group problems or challenges. And that's part of the reason why I'll explain later in this video why a lot of African Americans have issues with Asians historically, not on a personal level, but on a community level, because they play isolation. They don't take sides on anything. And then all of a sudden when the pandemic happened and this COVID thing happened and they start having issues, they wanted love and support. But historically, they have showed no love and support for all of the issues that African Americans go through every day politically, publicly, and socially. So let's first start with the first one. Asians are not considered people of color. Specifically, I'm talking specifically Chinese. Historically, Chinese people, if you look at their skin and a white person's skin, it's just as bright. Really, it's just as bright. And they have not acted as a people of color. First of all, they're a significant minority in America, right? Like probably 6 to 7%. And historically, they have aligned themselves with white people. And let me explain what I mean by that. I attended the University of Houston. It's one of the most international colleges in the United States. And it had a large population of Asians. And the girls that I went to school with, most of the first generation Asian girls, that means that their parents came from another country, but they were born here, act similar to white girls, dress like them, act like them, talk like them. And there's an overwhelming which I noticed, propensity for these Asian girls to date white guys. Why? Because this is something that I see from certain communities throughout the world. When they tend to come to the United States, foreigners that want to get ahead, that have an aggressive mindset, tend to want to associate themselves with the dominant class. It's a way to climb the social ladder quickly. And so Asian girls do this more than even Asian guys. What they do is they like to, if they had to associate with one group, if they had to adopt the similarities to one group, they're going to adopt the similarities of the main group. They're not going to come here and adopt the similarities of somebody who's considered less than or who has less competitive edge, like black people or Hispanic people. So they tend to gravitate toward white people. They live in white communities. If you notice, a lot of first generation Asian, especially from China, a lot of them, even the guys, they talk just like white boys. A lot of Asian girls have a thing for white guys. And even some of the Asian guys from their own community complain about how a lot of their Asian girls prefer white guys. Why? It's a way to climb up the social ladder. What people don't realize about China specifically, and in this video I'm talking about China right now, not necessarily other Asian countries. I'm not talking about India. I'm not talking about Cambodia, Vietnam, Korea, Philippines. I'm talking about specifically China Asians right now. A lot of them have a lot of similarities with white people. There's a lot of social hierarchy in China. It's very fiercely competitive. And if you're not successful, if you don't have a good name on your family, you're nothing. So that ideology is already exists in China, probably in a bigger way than it is in America. So a lot of them come over here, their parents, right? And a lot of parents tell their kids, hey, don't associate yourself with the bad element. I even saw a lot of YouTube videos of Asian girls and guys telling YouTube how their parents told them not to hang around black people, right? Not because they necessarily hate them, it's just not the best way up socially. So they're already getting taught at a young age, some of them, not all of them, by their parents, hey, associate with white people, stay away from black people, if you don't date black people, right? So if a lot of Asian kids bring a girl home that's not Asian, most likely it's gonna either be a white girl or a white guy. And so if you think about that, and you listen to what she just said in this video, it doesn't align up. Everybody knows, specifically black guys, know that Asians don't mess with us. They don't go out their way to get involved in our politics. They don't show public solidarity to some of our issues. So that's why this video comes off so hypocritical. Now, I don't know what's in this young lady's heart. She seems like her heart's in the right place. Maybe she do believe that, but this is definitely a feminine ideology because, let's be honest, in order to produce the best videos on TikTok or YouTube, competition has to decide who's best. When you make great videos that people and that provide value, people will watch them and eventually they'll get shared and you'll get your due. So this ideal that they need to stop producing because they're white and let you catch up or let you get more exposure is ridiculous. I wouldn't want it as a masculine man. And that's why I mentioned in this video, this is a feminine collectivist ideology, because clearly a man wouldn't want these type of handouts. We want to compete and win and destroy the competition. We don't want them to take a break in the summer to give us a chance to catch up. That's only something that a woman or a feminine energy will come up with. So I wanted to talk about that. Now, another thing I want to talk about, the historic animosity between blacks and Asians in this country. And one of the reasons for it is because a lot of Asians are inherently prejudiced when they come over here. I'm talking about from China, not because they're bad people, not because they're racist, but you have to realize if you have an Asian parent that came over there as a first generation, 90% of Asians in Asia are Asian. They look like them. They're not used to seeing at scale or living with other groups, specifically groups like blacks. So when they get here, the only thing they've seen about us in China is what they saw on television and magazines. And we already know we don't control the media in America. So obviously if they seen anything on television, it was a whole bunch of stereotypes. So by the time they get here, they're already sacrificed a lot to get here. They have their kids. They're trying to compete. They want to associate with the dominant class. They're going to clearly tell their kids, don't mess with black people. Not only that, but they took a social and economic isolationist strategy in this country. And this is the number one reason why Asians, especially ones from China, have a beef with black people. When I say beef is we don't necessarily go to bat for them. when it comes to political and public and social issues because they chose an isolationist strategy. What that means is they come to this country, we don't talk about politics. We don't have an opinion. When it comes to black issues, black social issues, even political issues, Asians stay out of it. When it comes to economics, Asians tend to go out their way to spend money in their own community or spend money in the dominant community, which is white people, things that white people own. They come into black areas, they open up Chinese restaurants, they make money, but they do not give black back. They don't go into black shops, they don't go out their way to hang out with us, to be around us, and they don't speak up in the media about social issues that affect us. So really, that's an isolationist strategy. That's a strategy saying, hey, you don't exist. I'm only interested in the dominant class and how I can associate with them before I can get ahead. So we notice that. That's what a lot of Asians don't understand, that there's a lot of black people who just look. We don't say anything about it. We don't have a problem with Asians, but we notice how they move. And because we notice how they move, we kind of give that same energy back. Hey, you don't care about me? I don't care about you. And that's how they operate. And I'm not saying they're doing it because they specifically have an issue with black people. They just have chosen, hey, I'm only interested in winning. I'm only going to interact with the people who can help me win. And that's usually white people. So not only are they not concerned with black people, they're not concerned with Mexicans or any other group, right? They chose an isolationist strategy. But understand, you're living in one of the most diverse countries in the world. People can see how you're moving. Whether you say it or not, you cannot hide it. And so when the pandemic hit and they start getting all this flack about COVID, all of a sudden they want to be a person of color. All of a sudden they want to get involved in civil rights and talk about discrimination. But we've watched you for 50, 60 years operate as an isolationist strategy. You didn't comment. You don't step up when things happen to black people. You don't want to live by us. You don't interact with us. Your girls go out their way to not date us. Your parents tell you secretly at home not to date us. You're an isolation. So in that isolating, we're going to isolate you back. And so that's why I find this video so interesting. All of a sudden, this girl thinks that she's a person of color without even knowing the American context of how a lot of Asians are seen. Now, I want to add a little part to this. There is a group of Asians that are cool with black people that we do recognize more than a lot of the Chinese Asians that come over here. And I want to say for the record, I don't personally have an issue with Asians, even the Chinese ones. I'm just telling you the historical context of what I've noticed being a citizen in this country and being very observant. I never had a problem hanging out with anybody, actually. So, I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll give you a quick anecdote. My brother is a computer engineer, and two of his friends were Asian. And he used to go to their house all the time. And he told me one time his Asian friend told him that his dad was like, I don't want you hanging out with him. Then the Asian guy told his dad that my brother was an engineer. So once he found out that my brother was an engineer, he was totally cool with him hanging out. So that shows the type of aggressive mindset that they have about winning. They don't want you hanging with any losers, which I understand, but don't assume an entire group is a loser right off the bat just because they're black. So that's the only issue I had with that. But there's a group of Asians in America, I do want to say in this video, that we tend to have more connection with. And that's typically Filipinos, Vietnamese, Thailand, Korea, Cambodia, any darker skinned Asian. And one of the terms they used to use, even though it's not a term that they like, is called jungle people, right? And so they tend to be dark. And what I notice is that this is a colorist issue throughout the entire planet. Throughout the entire planet, if you're darker, other lighter skinned people tend to try to look down on, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in China, whether you're in North America. It doesn't matter. There's colorism that's a global issue. And people think that the nature of it is genetics. Like they're worrying about genetic annihilation, because typically we know this, and I'm not going to get into details about this, but you know, dark is the dominant gene and then lighter is the recessive gene. So genetic annihilation means that any darker person who mates with a lighter person is going to produce a darker person. And so people think that that's the history of it. So this is an issue throughout the entire planet, that if you're darker, you're less than, or the lighter you are, the more aggressive you are toward the darker, because the darker is a genetic threat. That's what I think historically has been. So I do want to say that we normally don't have issues with tend to be darker people. So there's a good relationship with blacks when it comes to Vietnamese, Koreans, Filipinos, Thailand. We tend to get along with them more because they tend to not see themselves so different from us. So I'm not throwing all the Asians under the bus. And also Indians. We tend to get along with them more because they're slightly darker and they tend to not see themselves as different from us. So I don't know where this girl's heart at, but I do want to bring up that I hope she's aware of the historical context when she speaks like this about calling herself a person of color. Now, she did get pushed back on TikTok. Here's some of that.
So since TikTok decided to take down my first video, I'll do it again. So let me get this straight. You said every white content creator over 10K followers should stop posting for the summer. Who are you to say who should post and who should not post? Honestly, that's a little racist for you to come out there and just single out white people.
So obviously a lot of other people didn't necessarily agree with her as well. So, man, the overall lesson is this, this woke culture is very funny. It's both good and bad. It's good that maybe this Asian girl who typically associates herself with white, or at least her group does, is waking up to the reality of the situation. Maybe they'll start acknowledging other groups in a real way. Maybe they'll start actually hanging out with them. Maybe they'll actually start spending some of their money with other groups. So what she's doing is not all bad, but just the way she's going about it is feminine and not really the best way to do it. Really, you can't expect competition to sit down for you just because you think there's unfair things in the world. The world is competitive, the world's not fair, and so she needs to get that. Anyways, I appreciate you watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been the Invisible Hand Podcast. Peace.
The future of legal betting is finally here. Place a bet using Bitcoin right over the phone. Unlike traditional gambling sites, every bet you make with us is guaranteed a 50% probability of winning. All of our bets are one-on-one against a real person and never the house. We offer some of the most unique bets in the industry. Bets like, will LeBron James win his 5th NBA title? Will Joe Biden be elected for a second term? Will Tesla be worth $1 trillion by the end of 2022? You can bet on if it'll rain tomorrow. You can literally bet on any future event. Text the phrase I bet to the number in the description and I'll reply back with all of our available bets. Again, text the phrase I bet to the number in the description and I'll reply back with all of our available bets today.